Indeed. Now, this morning there are fears that thousands more lives could have been lost in the Sierra Leone mudslides. Jonathan has more details.
Yes, Sarah Jane, it's such a grim situation. The fear is that whole communities have been lost. Rescuers say they're struggling to remove bodies from the debris, and now they're worried about disease. Well, our correspondent Rebecca Williams is in Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown. Rebecca, how is the rescue operation and indeed the recovery operation going?
Well, I'm outside the morgue at the moment. A lot quieter scenes here this morning, and we know that 271 bodies were taken away from the morgue here overnight. They'll be taken to a burial site at Waterloo Cemetery, about 18 miles from here. Incidentally, that was where the Ebola victims were buried back in 2014. Chaotic scenes here yesterday, hundreds of people queuing up to try and identify loved ones. But many people telling us that they were so battered and bruised that it simply was not possible to identify them. In the last hour or so, we've seen ambulances pull up, we've seen taxis with coffins in the back. Some people will, of course, get a funeral, but the majority here will get a mass grave. Now, inside this morgue, like I say, yesterday, very chaotic scenes, people dressed head to toe in these white suits, which were left over from the Ebola crisis here 3 years ago, and I have to say it is a lot calmer here today. There's not that smell which is indescribable, and we know that the bodies will be removed from here by about midday today because they are so worried about disease, things like cholera, fever, and of course this is a country no stranger to disease, what with them being blighted by Ebola, as I say, a few years back. But the rescue effort does go on. Now, 3 days on, very, very little chance of finding anyone alive, but we do know that hundreds and hundreds of people are still unaccounted for.
OK, thank you very much, Rebecca.
Now, we've been keeping you up to date with those awful events in Sierra Leone, and there are fears this morning that thousands more lives could have actually been lost in those mudslides. Jonathan has more details. Yeah,
the country's president, Sarah Jane, saying that they urgently need international help. Rescuers are struggling to remove bodies from the debris, and now they're worried about disease. Well, our correspondent Rebecca Williams is in Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown. What's the situation like there today in terms of the recovery operation and the rescue operation?
Well, it's bleak, Jonathan, that's for sure. We're outside the mortuary at the moment. We understand around 270 bodies were taken from here overnight, and they will be buried because they are worried that disease could spread, things like cholera, typhoid, fever. Of course, this is a country no stranger to disease. Just 3 years ago, it was blighted by an Ebola outbreak, and you can probably see just behind me people head to toe in these outfits. They have been kept since that Ebola outbreak. We understand these mass burials will take place today at Waterloo Cemetery. That's where the Ebola victims were buried. I have to say we have seen taxis come in today with coffins inside them. Of course, those who have been identified, many of their families will want them to have a proper funeral ceremony. We have just been into the hospital here as well, speaking to some survivors, some truly harrowing tales. One lady survived. She has injured her leg. She's there with her young son, just 10 years old. One lady telling me that she'd lost 16 members of her family. Another lady pregnant, and she had to shelter and dig herself out of the rubble when the mudslide happened. So very, very bleak situation here. And now, of course, the concern that disease could spread.
Just horrific. Thanks very much, Rebecca.